All right, guys, welcome back to the Everything College Bowl podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be looking at the 2023 Orange Bowl being contested Saturday, December 30th, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Bulldogs, 2 touchdown favorites live from Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens. Looking at these offenses, for Florida State, there isn't much of one. Of course, that was, the notion before the postseason with no Jordan Travis. This unit certainly completely fell apart. We certainly felt that they had plenty of opportunity, though, in the 2 games against Florida and Louisville to prove that the quarterback position was not a liability for them. 134 from Rodmaker, 55 from Brock Glenn in the title game. 224 yards or less in both of those games. They had the opportunity to prove it, Nick, and they did not. Now they come into Miami with nobody playing pretty much. They're down. I think Rodmaker will be back as their second-string quarterback. That was the starter. Coleman Wilson, Jaheim Bell, Trey Benson, even Bless Harris at tackle transferred. Rodney Hill's in the portal as well. There's nobody left here for Florida State. What do you think is going to happen here after putting up no yards at all and opportunities to impress the committee, and now they have to face one of the nation's best defenses?
It's going to be tough for this team to even score points in this matchup. It's a tough situation for Florida State. We've talked about it at length. Again, I feel for Florida State. It is embarrassing to a degree. I saw Florida State fans on social media saying they had to boycott this game and not playing it. This is a tough situation for Florida State. They really have nothing to gain and everything to lose here. If they get blown out in this game, all people are going to say is, well, the committee got it right. If they win the game, people aren't really going to talk much about it and just say, oh, well, whatever. They still wouldn't have competed with Michigan or, whoever else at this point. This is a tough situation for them, and this offense is just I would rattle off offensive stats, right? They were impressive, scoring 37 points per game, but this is not the same offense at all. They're missing so much talent across the board here. Just a weird game that they're going to just sleepwalk their way to a beating in. Florida State fans don't care about it. Georgia fans don't care about it. Really, no one cares about it. This offense, Tate Rodemaker basically has no one to throw to, and he's going to be just trying to chucking up passes and hoping that he can find somebody down the depth chart. Kyle Morlock, I guess, is a guy that could potentially get some catches here early on. I don't even know who else. Marcus and Douglas is another guy. He had 2 touchdowns this year. He could potentially be involved, but this is going to be a tough look for this Florida State offense. They're going to struggle to move the ball and put up any points.
Yeah, I'll try to sugarcoat as best as possible. 6'6" tight end Kyle Morlock, a physical guy they'll try to give looks to. Ja'Kai Douglas, he's been around for a while. The guy's probably going to get a go in this game. Former 5-star Hakeem Williams, unless they're trying to preserve a red shirt, he should probably see some good looks as well. Destin Hill, Darian Williamson. There's some guys here down the depth chart. But like you said, probably not much can happen here. Kentron Potter, solid pass catcher in the past for them. Lawrence Tafali, 463 and 4 scores. He's one guy that's going to be playing, has some pretty good numbers. He's probably going to finally get a bulk of the carries. And I guess we'll just talk about the offensive line. Jeremiah Byers kind of struggled this year in pass protection at right tackle. Maurice Smith had a really good year at center, I thought. Casey Roderick was, a bit of an asset at his left guard spot in pass protection, as was Darius Washington when he was, at left guard. He also played some center. He was a really good pass blocker. So this offensive line, they're going to have an elite performance to really have a shot in this game. You look at the Georgia offense, no opt-outs really at the moment on this side of the ball. Dijon Edwards, Kendall Milton, you certainly want to monitor them as seniors, although they'll probably play. Brock Bowers, I'd say he's probably good to be watching this one without his pads on. Dominic Lovett, Marcus Rasmussen, Jack Saint, Lad McContney, Ra Thomas. I think all these guys, they all had 380-plus receiving yards this season. It was a versatile passing attack for Georgia. Thought they'd really dominate man coverage this year, and that wasn't exactly the theme, but Beck was a lot better than expected. 3,700 yards, 22 touchdowns in 13 games. This guy has some really good accuracy, throws with a lot of heat on the ball, completed 72%, 243 against Bama. Not many big plays were available for them, though, so I didn't think he played a bad game. There was just not a lot of separation in that one. And this rushing attack is incredibly physical. Milton and Edwards both had combined for 23 rushing touchdowns. They both were in double figures. Both had 700-plus yards. The depth isn't all that great at the position, so if they do opt out, you'll see a lot of Dylan Bell and Cash Jones. But I think regardless, Georgia's still going to have a pretty physical rushing attack regardless of who's in the backfield, Nick, even though they did struggle against Bama, and Florida State's really good against the run. They got some opt-outs on that side of the ball as well.
This is an efficient offense here with an opportunity to play against, like you said, a defense that has a lot of opt-outs across the board. This offense was solid, right? 38.4 points per game, 5.08 yards per attempt on the ground, 7.12 yards per play. Carson Beck looked a lot better than I thought he was going to look. He could have probably entered the draft and been, a round 2, 3, 4 type of guy. He ends up coming back to Georgia. Makes a lot of sense for him. Makes a lot of sense for Kirby Smart and company to get their signal caller back. Good move, in my opinion, for both parties involved. Back 72% comp rate, 3,700 yards passing, 22 touchdowns, 6 picks. He's going to be a great quarterback next year. Early Heisman favorite certainly will be in the discussion as this Georgia team plays some tough teams early on in the schedule. No Brock Bowers, not really going to be a problem in my opinion. You'll love it. Rosemary Jack Saint, McConkey, Rara Thomas, all going to play most likely. Bell will probably play out of the backfield. He's a receiver. They sometimes use him in pass game as well as a running back. Oscar Delp, the tight end, stepping up for Bowers. He's a solid player. This is a very solid Georgia offense top to bottom. If the rushing attack is a little bit weaker due to maybe Edwards or Milton might not play, I think Bell, Cash Jones could be involved. Beck's pretty solid on the ground at times as well, 4 rushing touchdowns. This offense will be fine in this game. I think they have a great opportunity to put up a ton of points against a very battered and opt-out heavy Florida State defense here.
Georgia interior offensive line, whoever they roll out alongside Cedric Van Pran at center, whether it be Tate Ratledge, Dylan Fairchild, or Micah Morris at the guard positions, they've been elite. None of them have allowed a sack all year. I mean, that's pretty absurd. And at the tackle spots, they're a little bit weaker. And Xavier Truss has really struggled this year. Amarius Mims coming back into the lineup, though, certainly has benefited them. And now you look at the defense. Florida State, this is a unit that certainly was able to propel them to, an undefeated record and even having playoff considerations of what they were able to do. 146 on the ground. Florida had 77 for Louisville. Jordan could get nothing going. Florida, that was on 44 attempts. So this was a run defense that really stepped up when they had to, because I know they were vulnerable to giving up some big plays early on in the year. Jared Verse going to the draft. Patrick Payton, he's gone to the portal. You got Fabian Lovett as well. Looks like he's going to the NFL. So you have some real muscle up there in terms of playmaking and being able to get into the backfield as Payton and Verse both had double-figure tackles for loss. Kalen DeLoach looks like he's going to be playing in this one, as is Tatum Bethune. And DJ Lundy, their third outstanding linebacker, he's transferring. So the good news is they still do have a handful of good players, and Braden Fiskey playing up front. Joshua Farmer, I believe he's a go as well. Byron Turner, he's going to be on the field. So they have some solid guys here can really stack up against the run. Gilbert Edmonds going to see more time. Malcolm Ray, I think he might have been in the portal. So there's a lot of turmoil going on here. Not as bad as the offense, and having these linebackers here might just be a saving grace here to potentially, stifle this run game.
There are some solid pieces that are going to be playing this game for the defense. So this defense could have a nice, successful day here. Bethune and DeLoach are 2 great leaders for this defense. Bethune, 70 total tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss. DeLoach, 66 total tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks for him. Fiskey is another solid player. He will be playing. It's good that he's going to be playing in this game. 43 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 6 sacks for him. Joshua Farmer, 32 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. This is a unit that has been ripped apart here with losing some of their top players in terms of tackles for loss and things like that. But this is a unit that will still look relatively the same, right? 15.9 points per game was a really solid number for this team. The yards per game was a little bit higher than you might have thought early on, but overall this is a good defense and a solid unit that just, kept their team in games. They kept them in that Louisville game and gave them an opportunity to compete and win the ACC ultimately.
There's only one team in FBS that gave up an under 51% completion rating to opponents. That was Florida State, far and away, 46.8%. It was a phenomenal mark. Gave up only 8 touchdowns, 10 picks as well. I mean, this was the second year they played very well this season. At times, they were also probably giving up some big plays. Back half of the year, though, they were phenomenal, even though they were playing some lesser opponents. They showed up against a team like Louisville. Obviously, Jack Plummer is completely clueless and should just retire. In Miami, they're opting to go with a backup quarterback in that game, so they're able to hold them in check. But this is still a second year. You got to go out and prove it. Guys like Shaheem Brown, Renardo Green are great. Jerian Jones was a pleasant surprise for them with his 3 picks. Greedy Vance was really good. I think the safeties position was at times a bit of a liability, but I think Akeem Dent still a very sound player for them, along with Brown. So Florida State defense, very sound. I think this team at full strength in the playoff could have competed with this side of the ball they have. Looking at the Georgia defense, no one right now has opted out, so you certainly want to monitor this in the coming days. Doesn't look like they're going to be hammered too bad, obviously. Jamon Dumas Johnson transferring to Kentucky. Probably wasn't going to play in this one anyways. Haven't seen him over the last couple of weeks with his injury. I think guys like Javon Bullard, you got to watch. Smail Munden at linebacker, though he's coming back for next season. Guys like C.J. Allen, going to get a go at linebacker. They have plenty of young guys. I think they're excited to get into the lineup here. Jalen Walker as well. So Dumas Johnson transferring is probably not going to be that big of a loss. I know some people are talking about how competitive this linebacking room is. Maybe that's why he opted out. Michael Williams, still very good, strong player. Didn't have a big season for them. Nazir Stackhouse, Zion Logue. This is a defensive line that doesn't exactly have any first-round talent by any means, but these guys still stack and shed very well. That's why this, Warren Brinson, another senior. That's why this, run defense is incredibly elite. Once again, 117 yards per game allowed. That's the most they've had in recent memory, really. I know they're very vulnerable up the middle, but not to a bad tune by any means. They've given up 100-plus rushing over the last, 5 games, so that's certainly something you want to monitor. But I don't think Florida State, they're really going to be able to expose that by any means. last 6 games, that is. And they have given up 1 touchdown in each contest, so certainly something Kirby's going to look to sharpen in the offseason. What do you make of this Georgia defense coming to this one, Nick? Wasn't an awful game against Alabama. 2.7 yards per carry. Certainly was brought down by some sacks they had due to the quarterback holding the ball maybe a little bit too long. But when it comes to short yardage and being able to get conversions, Bama was able to do that. And that's why this run defense was kind of exposed in that way. But again, Florida State not going to be doing anything here.
This is a defense that's a good defense, right? But by Georgia standards, they were a little disappointing this year. 16.6 points per game, 3.86 yards per attempt on the ground, and 4.83 yards per play. Again, still a really solid defense, even though a little disappointing by Georgia standards. Smell Mundon, 68 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Good numbers there. True freshman C.J. Allen, he stepped up, 35 total tackles plus a sack. Tackle loss for him. This year's Stackhouse, just a big run clogger in the middle there. 21 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Chad Chambliss, 20 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss for him. Zion Logue, 16 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss for him. Mikael Williams, 14 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks for him. So good numbers, solid production from some of these guys. Big physical defensive pieces here. Kirby Smart defense is going to be strong, and they're really looking at the opportunity here to play an offense that is just absolutely battered and torn up and looking to have a strong day.
Yeah, you look at the secondary. Tyke Smith finally being healthy allowed him to play the slot. Meant Javon Bullard could move out to safety. Both those guys had great seasons. Kamari Lassiter's really locked down on his side. Malachi Starks, this guy's an elite run defender. Nice tackler. Dalen Everett maybe more of a liability on the other side at corner. But the secondary isn't really a problem by any means. Certainly think this would have been a heck of a backup, a battle at full health, potentially in the playoffs. But here, there's not going to be in a battle at all. So I don't really know much to say. Other than we'll go ahead and move to the final thoughts and the predictions for Georgia. Play with that anger. I know they're pretty upset they got left out. They didn't seal the deal though. They didn't win against Alabama. Get momentum back for this next win streak after that 29-game one was ended. For Florida State, and I don't think this game is going to vindicate how good they could have done in the CFP at full strength. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of internet trolls, this and that. But people like us know, Nick, this team could have won a national championship. Won't have the opportunity to show it here. Their entire roster is now decimated. They're also pretty upset, but I don't think they're going to play with any passion or anger like Georgia is. 45-0 for me. That might sound a little too rough, but this offense could generate absolutely nothing against lesser opponents. And, the Florida defense was getting destroyed before that game. They put up, pretty much nothing on them. 0 points here. Florida State's not going to do anything. I know it's a quick little drive down from Tallahassee. Probably not that quick, but, you get the gist, in their home state. I don't even know how many fans are probably going to show up. This one's going to be a big blowout in favor of Georgia, Nick.
Yeah, I took a big blowout as well, 38-3. I think some petty points maybe for Florida State, getting 3 points on the board. Maybe that's how I'm looking at it. This is just a tough game for Florida State. I said it kind of in the open here that, they have nothing to gain, everything to lose really from this situation. If they get blown out here like we expect, the media and social media and people are just going to continue to say how the committee got it right and this team had no business. Prior to the injuries, specifically to Jordan Travis, this team had every right to play for a national championship. They were in the playoff in my preseason pick. I'm pretty sure they were in the playoff in your preseason pick as well. This is a very talented team that won their Power 5 conference unbeaten and got left out. Again, I think that was the right decision to put Alabama in. If had Georgia beaten Alabama, I think Georgia would have gotten in easily over then. I think Texas would have gotten over Florida State as well at that point. If Alabama was playing Florida State in this game, I think it would also be a blow. I think Alabama would absolutely trounce Florida State. Nick Saban preaches no opt-outs in his program as well. So whatever way you slice it here, Florida State was in trouble. Whatever New Year's Six bowl they found themselves in once they got left out of the playoff, whoever they had to play, they were in a deep hole, and Georgia's just the victim that they get thrown at them. And Florida State is in a lot of trouble here. Georgia should have no problem running all over them and putting up points, whatever they want to do at this point. I don't think Georgia has much energy, but I think they have enough energy to score a fair amount of points in this game. Just a tough, unfortunate matchup here. Blowout city written all over this one.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's 2 types of anger here. One's going in one way in favor of Georgia being amped up, and the other one's in favor of FSU and not wanting to probably try. And I think that's kind of evident with all these opt-outs and transfers and whatnot. So I don't think it'll be a good game at all, Nick. Orange Bowl is always, a nice, game to watch. Love South Beach, but not much to tune in here for on ESPN.
This is going to be a tough Orange Bowl. Kind of reminds me of the one where Florida and Virginia played a few years ago. Ended up being a total blowout. Virginia just didn't really have a shot against that Florida team. This is going to be a tough matchup, certainly. Not really looking forward to this one. I'll tune in for a little bit, but this is a tough matchup to watch, certainly.
Yeah, certainly seems like 14.5 is free money. We'll see what happens there. In the Virginia-Florida game was actually a bit closer, but like you said, on paper, it kind of seemed like a bit of a whoop, but that one was competitive. Come here for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.
Yeah, it was a blowout, wasn't it? What was the score of this game? Oh, yeah. I'm thinking of a different.